G'day and salutations. Today's briefing, Australia's National Defence Strategy. New capability, but when? Australia has released the National Defence Strategy and Integrated Investment Plan 2024. The strategy builds on the Defence Strategic Review, see separate briefing link below, which stated that the Australian Defence Forces, the ADF's, current force structure is not fit for purpose for the current strategic circumstances, and that the ADF must move from a joint to a future integrated force with long-range strike from all domains. The National Defence Strategy and Integrated Investment Plan covers more than just platforms, including improvements to infrastructure, increases in war stocks, including munitions and fuel, and engagement with allies and partners. What does this mean for the future of the ADF in terms of new and enhanced capabilities? And when will they be delivered? Before looking at capability, we need to understand where the ADF is expected to operate. Australia's area of primary defence interest is the northeastern Indian Ocean through maritime Southeast Asia and into the Pacific. This region includes the northern approaches to Australia. Australia's approach to operating these areas is to be a strategy of denial, which Australia plans to achieve through long-range strike capabilities, undersea warfare, and an integrated air defence system. But Australia does not plan to fight alone in this area of operations. Australia's alliance with the US in particular will become even more important with increases in bilateral planning, US force posture in Australia, and joint patrols. But ADF operations will not be confined to that area. It is very likely the ADF will operate further north within the First Island chain up to the Korean Peninsula and East China Sea, and into the western part of the Northern Pacific to include the Second Island chain. The ADF will likely also operate more widely throughout the entire Indian Ocean, including as far as the Horn of Africa. So these are the most likely areas where the ADF will operate. When must the ADF be ready to operate in these areas? The National Defence Strategy gives 3 time periods or epochs for the ADF to reach its end state. First, the enhanced force in being refers to the current ADF with enhancements that can be achieved in the period 2023 to 2025, including the fitting of longer range and more lethal weapons onto existing platforms, the hardening of command and control networks and bases, and, where possible, the early delivery of relevant priority in-train capability projects. This suggests 2026 as the start of a time of significant concern for defence planners. Second is the objective integrated force, which is to be realised by 2030 through the acceleration or addition of new capabilities in line with the force structure priorities and guidance outlined in the Defence Strategic Review, suggesting high priority capabilities that need to be realised as soon as possible but can't meet a 2025 timeframe. Third is the future integrated force, which is the long-term design for the ADF force from 2031 and beyond, although this is unlikely to be fully achieved before the mid-2040s. As the Australian Government has said that it no longer has a 10-year window of strategic warning time for conflict, for the purposes of this briefing, we'll look at the capability available to the ADF by the end of the second period, that is, by the end of 2030. These capabilities will be addressed under the following headings: undersea warfare, other maritime capabilities, amphibious capable combined arms land force, air force capabilities, and cyberspace and electronic warfare. The overall maritime capability is further divided into undersea capabilities and maritime capabilities for sea denial and control. This capability also includes Air Force assets, primarily the P-8 Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft and MQ-4C Triton high-altitude long-endurance UAV, but also the F-35 and F/A-18Fs armed with anti-ship missiles. In terms of undersea warfare capability, most attention is on the future acquisition of SSNs. Australia is planning to receive the first of 3 Virginia-class SSNs in the early 2030s, likely around 2032-2033, with the potential to acquire 2 more if needed. Also planned is the development and acquisition of subsea warfare, autonomous and uncrewed maritime vehicles. In the meantime, in order to maintain a submarine capability, $4 to $5 billion will be allocated to ensure that the 6 Collins-class conventional submarines can continue to provide a credible capability to conduct operations. The other main maritime capability is that of the surface combatants. The future force will consist of Anzac frigates upgraded with a naval strike missile, Hunter-class anti-submarine warfare frigates beginning to enter service around 2034, upgraded Hobart-class air warfare destroyers with naval strike missiles, Tomahawk long-range cruise missiles and the SM-6 standard surface-to-air missile, and the large, optionally crewed surface vessels to be built in the 2030s and 2040s. These will be joined or replaced by a class of new general-purpose frigates under Project C3000, with the shortlisted candidates consisting of the German MEKO A200, a modernised and evolved version of the original MEKO 200 on which the Anzacs are based, the Korean Daegu FFX Batch 2 or Chungnam FFX Batch 3, the Spanish Alpha 3000 or possibly the larger Tasman variant, and the Japanese Mogami 30 FFM. Using the Mogamis as an example, they can be commissioned around 2.5 years after being laid down. However, there is no mention of funding for C3000 in the National Defence Strategy, and a design needs to be selected. It is possible some of the new general-purpose frigates will be in service by 2030, but this is not certain. So the Naval Combatant Force of 2030, there'll be no SSNs, 6 Collins-class conventionally powered submarines, 3 Hobart-class air warfare destroyers upgraded, none of the Hunter-class anti-submarine warfare frigates, possibly up to 6 of the Anzac-class frigates, possibly up to 2 of the new general-purpose class frigates, but any of these will take away from the 6 Anzac-class frigates, meaning there will only be a total of 6 frigates, and no large optionally crewed vessels. A major capability in implementing this strategy of denial is enhancing the ability to project and sustain deployed land forces in Australia's primary area of military interest. This is to be achieved by the Army optimised for littoral manoeuvre with a long-range land and maritime strike capability. This is to be achieved through an amphibious capable combined arms land system. While there will be 3 manoeuvre brigades as part of this system, the primary force here will be the Amphibious Armoured Combined Arms Brigade. Although we don't yet know its final structure, it will include the Boxer Combat Reconnaissance Vehicle, AS-21 Redback Infantry Fighting Vehicle, AS-9 Huntsman Self-Propelled Gun, and the M1A2 SEP-V3 Abrams Main Battle Tank. The 3 manoeuvre brigades will be supported by a Fires or Missile Brigade, consisting of the HIMARS Multiple Launch Rocket System and the NASAMS Surface-to-Air Missile System. This will be a central part of the Army's enhanced focus on littoral operations, providing the Army with long-range maritime strike together with an air defence capability. The other main combat support capability is provided by Army Aviation Assets, which will consist of 29 AH-64E Apache armed reconnaissance helicopters, 40 UH-60M Black Hawk tactical lift helicopters, and 14 CH-47F Chinook medium lift helicopters. Deploying the amphibious capable land force will be done by a combination of Navy and Army vessels. The largest of the naval vessels are the Canberra-class Landing Helicopter Docks, or LHDs, capable of carrying around 1,000 troops, 18 helicopters, and 4 landing craft. The LHDs are joined by another large landing ship, HMAS Charles, which is capable of carrying up to 700 troops, landing craft, and can operate helicopters up to the size of the CH-47 Chinook. These larger ships will be joined by Army vessels in the new Littoral Manoeuvre Group. These will be large enough to project out into the region, operating independently from other vessels. These vessels will include a replacement for the long-retired landing craft heavies. 8 are planned, with a displacement significantly larger than its predecessor, perhaps in the 3,000 to 4,000 tonne range, but will not enter service before 2031. What is clearer is the next level down from the landing craft heavies, that is the landing craft mediums, with 18 to be acquired. Burden and Austell will deliver a craft of around 50 metres in length and able to carry a 94 tonne payload. The final element, a replacement for the Larks, the lighter amphibious resupply cargo vehicles, is still to be decided, but 15 amphibious capable support vehicles are planned. The intention is for the landing craft of the Littoral Manoeuvre Group to launch from Darwin, northern Queensland and Brisbane into the near region to support forces operating in the littoral and riverine environments. In summary, the amphibious vessels available in 2030 will consist of 2 landing helicopter docks, 1 landing ship, no landing craft heavies, 18 landing craft medium, and an unknown number of amphibious craft light. Supporting the maritime and land forces will be an Air Force designed for expeditionary operations, one that can deliver long-range intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance, and an enhanced maritime, land and airstrike capability through the integration of long-range anti-ship missiles on the P-8, FA-18Fs and F-35As, and the possible integration of the Joint Strike Missile on the F-35As, providing these aircraft the ability to strike maritime targets at longer ranges. The F-18Fs and F-35As are also to be equipped with the Advanced Anti-Radiation Guided Missile Extended Range and the Joint Air-to-Surface Standoff Missile Extended Range. The Air Force also plans to introduce a medium-range ground-based air defence capability under Project Air 6502, but this is unlikely to be in service by 2030. In terms of air transport capability, the Air Force will operate the C-17A and C-130J Hercules aircraft that will be critical for deploying the land force into the area of primary defence interest. A summary of the Air Force available in 2030. In terms of combat aircraft, 72 F-35s, 24 FA-18Fs, 12 EA-18Gs and 14 P-8A Poseidons. 8 C-17A transport aircraft, 20 C-130Js and 10 C-27Js. In terms of enablers, 6 E-7A Wedgetail airborne early warning control aircraft, 4 MC-55A electronic warfare aircraft, 7 KC-30A tanker transports, and 6 MQ-4C Triton high altitude, long endurance UAVs. It is likely there will also be 10 of the new MQ-28 Ghostbat UAVs. Arming these aircraft will include, in terms of air-to-air missiles, AIM-9 Sidewinder, AIM-120 AMRAAM, and in terms of long-range anti-ship missiles, the AGM-152C, and potentially the JSM Joint Strike Missile. Working together with the Navy, Army and Air Force are the cyber, space and electronic warfare capabilities. Space is a critical enabler for military operations. In terms of communications, at least 2 large military communication satellites will be deployed, delivering a capability covering the Indo-Pacific. There will also be significant investment in cyber and electronic warfare capabilities, including continued investment in the Australian Signals Directorate through RedSpice, enhancing Australia's cyber capabilities, including defensive networks and new offensive cyber capability to support the ADF. There will also be investment in electronic warfare capabilities to protect the ADF's electronic warfare capabilities from jamming and to enable the ADF to locate and disrupt an adversary's electronic signals. Returning to kinetic elements of the defence strategy, An important element is Australia's guided weapons and explosive ordnance capability. Australia is to develop a sovereign GWEO enterprise that can produce, maintain, repair, store and overhaul select weapons and increase stocks of critical supplies to enable and support operations from Australia's northern bases. The ability to domestically manufacture advanced munitions, including the guided multiple launch rocket system missiles, is a significant development for the ADF. An issue not addressed at a national level in the NDS is that of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. The NDS does mention investing somewhere from 3.7 to 4.8 billion to develop and enhance fuel holdings, storage and distribution capabilities. But it doesn't address the issue of Australia's limited reserves. Australia is required to hold 90 days worth of oil imports as emergency stocks, yet Australia rarely achieves more than 60 days. This could be significant in a protracted conflict that includes maritime Southeast Asia. But great capability and sustainment will be lessened if they are not well located. Australia's military bases are located all over the country, but the major ones are mostly in central or southern Australia. There are major naval bases in Perth and Sydney, and major army bases in Darwin, Townsville, Brisbane and Adelaide. In order to facilitate Australia's new strategy of deploying forces into Southeast Asia and the South China Sea, the National Defence Strategy addresses northern facilities and additional logistics centres. This network of bases and ports stretches from the Australian territory of Cocos or Keeling Islands through the RAF bases at Curtin, Darwin, Tyndall, Sherga and Townsville, the naval facilities at Darwin and Cairns, and army bases in Darwin and Townsville. These ADF facilities are being developed and expanded to support allies as well, including in Darwin for the US Marines and Tyndall for the US Air Force. These facilities will likely become high-value targets to an adversary. And while the US will use these northern facilities, other allies and partners might also use them, as Australia plans to work even more closely with other countries and organisations. Notably, the US through ANZUS, Five Eyes arrangements, and of course AUKUS and the Quad. With New Zealand under ANZUS, Five Eyes again, and under the Five Power Defence Arrangement, the FPDA. With the United Kingdom, Five Eyes, FPDA and AUKUS. With Singapore and Malaysia, again under the Five Power Defence Arrangement. With South Korea, as Australia is part of the United Nations Command. And with Japan under the Quad and the Philippines. Further south into the Pacific Islands, Australia has significant contribution with the Pacific Maritime Security Program. With India under the Quad and with NATO, in particular Germany and France, as Australia is part of NATO's global partnership. Perhaps linked to these allies and partners is the National Defence Strategy's statement on recruitment. It states that, quote, Defence's workplace plans must also change to effectively respond to the workforce crisis, noting the ADF is currently around 4,400 personnel under strength, end quote. The National Defence Strategy suggests widening eligibility criteria to enable more people to join the ADF, including developing options to recruit non-Australian citizens. Noting Australia has for many years recruited British, New Zealand, Canadian and US citizens, might these new recruits come from other partner countries? Of course, to achieve all this equipment and personnel numbers, there must be appropriate funding. The Integrated Investment Program provides a funding line for defence capability invested over the decade, with financial year 2024-25 allocating 55.5 billion through to financial year 2033-34 with a projected outlay of over 100 billion. Looking at how this is apportioned out, proportional investment by capability priority would see around 17% for undersea warfare, 16% for other maritime capabilities, 8% for long-range strike, 8% for space and cyber, 11% for the Army's amphibious capable combined arms system, and 8% for expeditionary air operations. And proportional investment by domain, around 38% for the maritime, 16% for land, 14% by air, 3% for space, and 7% for cyber. In summary, Australia's National Defence Strategy and Integrated Investment Plan provides a grand vision for the next decade, but this raises a number of questions. Will this actually be fully funded? More importantly, is the timeline for delivery of capability accurate? The Undersea and Maritime Surface Combatant Force of 2030 will be a long way from its desired end state, something that won't be achieved until around the mid-2040s. By 2030, the Army should be able to partially deploy the Amphibious Armoured Combined Arms Brigade. But as a single formation, how long will it be able to sustain operations against a peer or near peer? The Air Force is in a far more mature state than the other services in terms of achieving the future integrated force in platform terms, but it will lack the medium-range ground-based air defence component by 2030. Further, even with the investment in domestic munitions production and increases in war stock holdings, how long will the ADF be able to maintain combat intensity against a peer or near-peer adversary? Recalling General Cavoli's comments on the scale of peer conflict and the importance of production capacity. In a nutshell, the Australian government is in effect saying that the ADF needs to be ready to engage with a peer or near-peer force somewhere in Southeast Asia and or the South China Sea, likely in less than 10 years' time. Such a scenario certainly could happen by 2030. A lot can happen in 6 years. But even if all the capability planned under the Objective Integrated Force is achieved by 2030, might it be a case of too little, too late? That concludes today's briefing. Thank you for watching. Happy to take suggestions for future briefings from subscribers, so please subscribe, like and share. Until next time, Vale de Cero.